It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap, and reliable. And if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-4-2 formation, one of the best balanced formations in FIFA 23. But just before we get into today's video guys, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up as it does really help me out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics for the defensive style, I like to have this on balanced. This is because it gives you the greatest control over your defense. So when you need to press, you're able to press, but then when you want to drop off, you are also able to do that. So it does give you the very much needed control over your defenders. Now moving on to the width, I like to have this on 35. This is so we can primarily defend the central areas of the pitch. So we get to defend in a nice compact narrow shape, but we still have a little bit of width, so if somebody does try and go down the wing, we're also able to cover those areas. That's the main reason we don't have the width any lower, because we wouldn't be able to cover the wider areas in that case. Now moving on to the depth, I like to have this on 45 at the moment. The reason for this is I was getting through-balled a lot having my depth higher, so just temporarily I've lowered this to about 45 and it's been working really well for me. We don't have it like too low to the point where we're constantly getting pinned back, but we have it on like 45 so we can actually, you know, defend those through balls without constantly getting bombarded. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I suggest having this on balance. This is because it's the most controlled form of build-up, where sometimes you can play it a little bit quicker, other times you can play it a little bit slower. You're really able to mix it up and get the variety that you need. If you use something like fast build-up, you know, you're very limited because you just have to play quickly. So I just suggest going for balanced as it is the most consistent and most varied. Moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest using direct passing. This is because it's the most meta option you can use. What it does is it makes your attacking players bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays which aren't possible with other tactics. You also get the extra pass option quite a lot, which will help you guarantee those goals, so it's super useful to use. Now moving on to the attacking width, I like to have this on 45. Now the reason we do this is because we don't want to up the width too much to the point where our players are like really spread out from each other, because you just have to fire missiles to get a simple pass off. Similarly, we don't want the width to be really low, otherwise our players are like sat on top of each other and we're not going to create much. So we kind of go for like a middle ground on like 45, so this works really well for me. Moving on to players in box, I have this on 5, so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires both of these to be on 1. Link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the 2 striker positions I suggest going for a balance between the players. So what I like to do is I have a more creative player in Havertz on the left hand side, somebody that can actually help build up the play a little bit so we can get a bit of creative work out of this one striker, and then next to him we have a more poacher striker, so we've kind of got like a creator finisher dynamic. It makes the team way less one-dimensional and it just seems to work a lot better for me. Moving on to the right mid and the left mid, you're going to want to use like good winger style players. These are players with really good attacking abilities, players that are fast and players that are obviously very creative. You're not going to want to use like slow clunky players with no creative ability here, otherwise you might struggle. You don't really need to worry too much about their defensive ability, but obviously if you can get good defensive stats, for example Saka's got 76 defending, that's just an added bonus really. Now moving on to the 2 centre mids, I like to go for a balance between the 2. So in the left centre mid option, I'm going for a more defensive minded CDM type player in Casemiro. This is somebody that's going to stay back and break up the play and really add defensive security for us. So you're going to want to use somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, so you get the maximum contributions in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward. Moving on to the right centre mid, you're going to want a more box to box style player, so you're going to want somebody with a high work rate if you can get it. It's not an absolute necessity as you get the maximum contribution in attack and defense, but you're just going to want the this player to have very well-rounded stats. Moving on to the fullbacks, I like to go for a balance between the two. So I have Roberto Carlos at left back, who's a more attacking-minded fullback. This is somebody that's going to contribute going forward for us. And then in the right back position, I've got somebody that's a little bit more defensive-minded, somebody that's a bit more solid in defence, but maybe lacks the attacking ability. It's just a nice balance to have. As for the centre-backs and the keeper, these just need to be as good as you can get them. There's not too much to say about them. Now, moving on to the player instructions, guys. On both the strikers, I have them on stay central and mixed attack. Now, the reason we have them on stay central is because we want them to cover the central areas. We don't want them drifting out wide, otherwise they're not in position and we're not going to get the most out of them. So we always want to ensure that they're in the middle, so they're always where the strikers should be. We also have them on mixed attack, as you get a lot more out of these players in the build-up than you would if you have them on getting behind. So instead of them just always making the same one-dimensional runs where you just have to through ball, sometimes they get involved in the build-up and you just get a lot more out of these two players. So I do very much suggest mixed attack. If you really insist on having a player on getting behind though, you can put your more like finisher striker on getting behind so they're making those runs, but honestly I like mixed attack. Now moving on to the right mid and the left mid, we have them on comeback on defence, cut inside, get in behind and get into the box for cross. We have them on comeback on defence, so we always ensure that they're in the correct position when we don't have the ball. If you have them on basic defensive support, sometimes they can get a little bit lost, especially if they don't have perfect work rates. So by putting them on comeback on defence, it just ensures that they're always in the correct position, makes us a bit more defensively sound, and when we win the ball back, they're always in position already, so it's easier to build up the play as like compared to if they were like already up the pitch, if that makes sense. They're just a bit closer to where they should be. We have them on cut inside, so they actively look to come into the center of the pitch and they get into those narrow spaces and really trouble the defense. We don't want them drifting out wide all the time, otherwise you know you're not really going to create much of a goal threat, because FIFA 23 it's important to play through the middle a lot of the time, and you're going to see what we do with the fullbacks too. We have them on getting behind, so they're always looking to make those incisive runs down the wing. Otherwise these players in particular can be a little bit static and they don't do too much, so getting behind is important to make sure that they actually make the correct runs. We also have them on get into the box for cross, so when our team is near the penalty area they're not as hesitant to commit into the box. If you have them on balanced crossing runs, sometimes they can be a little bit static and they don't get involved too much, so get into the box for cross, super important on both players in my opinion. Now moving on to the left centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking and cover centre. We have him on stay back while attacking because he is a defensive minded player, so we do want him to stay back and break up the play for us. We're not too bothered about him going forward, but most importantly we have him on cover centre, so he is covering the central areas, as we don't need any more players to cover the wing. Moving on to the right centre mid, the more box to box style player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because we don't really want to restrict this player. He is a box to box, he does have a bit of a free roll, so we kind of just let him do whatever he wants to. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he is covering the central areas. Now moving on to the left back, my more attacking minded fullback, I have him on balanced attack and overlap. Now this works very well with what I have on the left mid and the right mid. So basically we've got the left mid to cut inside, but we've got the left back to go on an overlapping run. So what this means is when we're going forward, Saka, my left mid, will run a little bit narrow, leaving space for Roberto Carlos to make the overlapping runs. This way we can play narrow and wide at the same time and we overload the side. It's very difficult for your opponent to mark both the wide option and the narrow option. Honestly, if we had this guy on balance width, I probably wouldn't bother committing the fullback forward, but because we've got him running narrow, it makes sense to have him on the overlap run type and it works out really nicely. Now moving on to the right back, the more defensive minded fullback, we have him on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have him on stay back, so we always at least have 3 defenders back, but we have him on the overlapping run type, so in case we do trigger a run forward with him, he's going to make the overlapping runs to add extra width. As for the centre backs and the keeper, they're on default settings and I don't touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-4-2. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a thumbs up, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.